Today I'm sharing with you this really easy acrylic painting of a poppy in a wheat field. If you'd like to see how this was done, stay tuned. So for this project I'm using burnt sienna, which I just use very little of that, some transparent mixing white, some unbleached titanium white, and burnt umber. We'll be adding more colors to the palette as we progress when we get to the flower, and I'll go over those at that time. So I'm just taking the unbleached titanium white and the burnt umber, and I'm making kind of a taupe color, and just using very random kind of crisscross strokes, very loose, very random. And every time I load my brush, I'm loading a different color, either darkening it or lightening it up with either the burnt umber or the unbleached titanium white, or maybe even titanium white. And I want the background to be very mottled. I want brush strokes, and this is a very loose, kind of free, easy painting. This would be perfect for a beginner, but even more advanced painters can paint this. I love this style because it's so loose. And I've been having a lot of problems with carpal tunnel in my hands, and so being able to paint kind of loose is a lot easier on it than trying to do photorealism, where you're painting a lot of detail. That's a little harder on my hands. And the key is to make this background just look very random. You want your colors to be very mottled. And here I'm adding kind of long brush strokes. This is going to indicate the wheat, and we just wanted to we're just kind of indicating wheat. We're not actually painting wheat stalks or anything like that. And since the paint is wet, it's blending very fast. So this kind of gives us some of the background, the wheat in the background. Adding more titanium white there. And I added a little of the burnt sienna, which gave it more of a peachy color, and I decided I didn't really like that. That's why I didn't use very much of the burnt sienna. But if you wanted yours more peachy and less taupe colored, then I would recommend adding in that burnt sienna. It would make it look really pretty. I'm just adding white into some of the areas that I wanted to lighten up a little bit. Just filling the canvas is pretty much all I'm doing. This is just kind of a background. So now I'm going to work on more of the kind of the wheat stalks by adding more of the burnt umber. And because it's wet, it's blending in really fast. So I have to reload my brush quite often. And I'm using a cat's tongue, which is like a filbert brush that comes to a point. I love these kind of brushes because they kind of do some little bit of detailed work with it, even though it's a filbert. But since it comes to a point, you can get a little bit of detail work done with it. So now I'm adding alizarin crimson and some primary red for my flower, and now I'm going to start on the poppy, and then I'm going to add in some cadmium orange hue and some Naples yellow hue onto the flower. Those are going to be all the colors that I use for the flower. I'm using all Liquitex Basics. I'm just kind of roughing in the shape of the flower, and then I will go in and blow dry it and do some of the detail. I'm picking up a lot of the background color, so I will end up blow drying this so the red will stand out better. That's a touch of the ivory black that I'm going to use to darken the red just a little bit. Oh, no, that was for the stem. I'm sorry. I put down a thin coat of the black, and then I'm going to go over it with some phthalo green once the black dries. Remember, my base paint is still really wet. I'm darkening up some of the red with a little bit of the black. So now I'm blow drying the painting. In order to get the flower to stand out, since a lot of the Liquitex basic colors are pretty transparent, you really need the base paint to be dry. So now that it's dry, I'm going to go back over it with mixtures of the alizarin crimson, a little bit of the black, and the primary red. And the reference photo for this is on Pixabay. So there is a reference photo for this. So now I'm just kind of defining where the edges of my petals are for the poppy. And now I'm incorporating a little bit of that burnt sienna in there to kind of warm that red up a little bit to make it a little more orangey colored. And that's some of the transparent mixing white. And there's the cadmium orange hue. I'm still using kind of loose strokes, but trying to add a little bit more detail to the flower. And there's some of the phthalo green. I'm adding just a little bit of black to darken it up. And now I'm going to go over, kind of loosely over the stem and leaves of the flower. Now I'm going to blow dry it again. So now my flower and everything is all completely dry again. I'm working on adding kind of highlights to the edges of the flower. The petals, that's the word I'm looking for. Remember, this doesn't have to look perfect. We're not striving for like photorealism, and certainly not hyperrealism. This is more impressionistic. We just want you to be able to tell what it is, that it's a flower. I'm adding a little of the Naples yellow hue to just brighten up some of the edges. So now I'm taking a mixture of the burnt umber and the titanium white, and I'm going in front of the flowers, or the flowers and the wheat, to add interest in the front of the flower. Kind of sets the flower back into the painting a little bit. Then I wanted to lighten up a couple of areas of the background just a little bit. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit the like button and make sure to subscribe.